As the chair said at the very beginning, this is an exploratory session to make sure we're getting our brains around the correct issues. And Mark, you've already begun to answer one of the divergences between what we're doing in the UK, potentially, and other jurisdictions. But I wonder whether you could help us, all of you help us, to look at the way others are seeking to regulate here, their approaches, and what the differences are, the pluses and the minuses. And I suppose, does it matter? Or does that actually, by having regulatory divergence, is that actually handing more power to the 5 big tech companies or more? Dirk, why don't I start with yourself?
Hey, it's a big question. So I think the best way to understand what's happening today around the globe is to think of 2 opposite models of regulation. The one would be something like competition, antitrust law, and on the other end, we have digital markets regulations. As I suggested earlier, there's a dissatisfaction with how competition law is working. People see many of the things that I think of as a feature of competition law as a bug. Basically, enforcers need to go in a given case and they need to show consumer harm. So there's dissatisfaction with that, and there have been many answers put forward. The one that is already enacted is the European DMA. How does it compare to European competition law? Basically, it does away with all the effects requirements of competition law that you have in Europe, in the United States. And so it tries to make enforcers' life easier. Whether or not that will ultimately benefit consumers is an open question. Compared to the DMA, the DMCC is relatively similar. They both have this process where you designate firms that have some level of market power. As in the DMA, there is very little way for firms to actually show a court that they actually don't have this market power. Both bills are pretty similar in that respect. Where they diverge is that the DMA has a list of obligations, and they're much more precise than the ones of the DMCC. Do's and don'ts. And those do's and don'ts apply to all tech firms that are gatekeepers under the DMA. Now, the Commission may afterwards say, look, these obligations are more relevant to you, not as relevant to you. The DMCC tries to do that a little bit differently, I think, by saying, well, instead of having this sort of one-size-fits-all approach, we're going to have a tailored approach where the CMA is going to be able to design basically the code, the conduct that each designated firm is going to have to comply with. I think, and I hate to say this, I fear that the DMCC has taken a feature from competition law, which is that it's very, very broad, done away with the effects requirements, and on the other hand, not taken the precise wording of the DMA, of the European DMA. So I don't want to say we have the worst of both worlds, but there's definitely a risk of mixing sort of loose regulation with not just weak judicial review, but standards that are not easily quantifiable, measurable, and that companies will not easily be able to sort of appeal a decision on. I think that's a problem. Like, I'll give you one example, and then I'll let others speak, but when the DMCC talks about significant market power, that seems like something that needs to be subject to a merits review. It's an inherently empirical question, and I can say that something has significant market power. It doesn't make it the case. I've gone on a bit, but I think there's really a mix of two things that shouldn't go together.
And just before I go on to Corey, does it matter that, as it were, the EU is in there first? Does that put us at a disadvantage because we are behind in terms of regulation?
I don't think so. I think the jurisdictions that will do best are the ones that strike an appropriate balance between the interests of platforms on the one hand and edge providers on the other one. on the other hand, and those are jurisdictions where consumers will have, when there's an appropriate balance, there will be more investment from platforms, consumers will have better products, and that will attract investment from foreign firms. Being first, I don't think, has any impact on that.